Aerosmith this morning. I don't want to miss a thing. 18 past 9, DCFM 88.9. It's early this morning, so we better get on with it. It's good morning to the Mayor of Dubbo, Councillor Matthew Dickinson. Good morning.
I know you always put those songs on Thinking of Me, and that was perfect. You don't want to miss a thing. That's exactly your approach to council. You don't want to miss a thing.
I do. Indeed, I've got plenty to ask you about. I want to start with Australia Day. Now, before we get onto Australia Day, people have got no idea about January the 26th. They talk about Captain Cook on January the 26th. April the 19th. That's for starters. So, you can't blame Captain Cook for January the 26th. And people need to know their history. But anyway, you're now saying that the council are going to run Australia Day on some other date.
Well, they did this year. We had the Australia Day ceremony in Wellington on the evening of the 25th. So It was a twilight ceremony, if you like, before the 26th. Now, we did that for a number of reasons. One, there is a recognition that Aboriginal people in our community see Australia Day as Invasion Day or Survival Day.
It's not Invasion Day. Invasion Day was the 19th of April. Survival Day may be, but forget invasion. It's wrong history.
So I take your point, but again, this is the feedback we hear from the Aboriginal community. So let's call it Survival Day then, so I don't get you too rolled up. And so it's hard when we're trying to get a unified community to come together when we have Australia Day and Aboriginal people don't want to be a part of Australia Day because of it being Survival Day. So we said, if you have it the night before, you've got a chance of bringing Aboriginal people to the event, and let's focus on what we think, what councillors thought should be the focus of Australia Day, which is what a great country we've got. And let's all come together. You've got Aboriginal people with 65,000 years of history, and we've got people who came to Australia 5 minutes ago, all part of our multicultural community. Isn't that fantastic? Don't we have a wonderful community? We're not having civil wars. We're having people all living together in, well, not perfect harmony, but in reasonable harmony. So let's focus on that. So we actually wanted to do both ceremonies in Dubbo in 2023 and Wellington the night before. But we were told by the Department of Home Affairs that we weren't allowed to do the Dubbo one on the night before. And there's a whole range of technical reasons around that, around citizenship, but we could do it in Wellington. So we did it in Wellington, and we did Dubbo on the morning of Australia Day, as has been done forever and a day. Now, Andrew Giles, the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs, made a decision just before Australia Day this year and said, hey, you can actually do an Australia Day ceremony up to 6 days before or after the date. That's after we'd already made our decision. And I'd actually spent a couple of months talking to the Department of Home Affairs and got nowhere, but obviously the Minister had heard from people like myself, and they made that decision. So too late for 2023, but 2024. What do we do there? We did a survey after Australia Day, and it was probably a bit late. It was in June we did the survey, and we actually said to everyone, please fill in the survey, tell us what you think of Australia Day, when you want it, a whole range of questions. Unfortunately, we only got 109 responses. Of those 109, about 34 in Wellington. About a third of people in Wellington, of those 34, said we like it the night before. Only about 6% or 7% of people in Dubbo said they liked the idea of the night before. So last night there was a fair bit of discussion and debate around when we would hold Australia Day next year. The first motion put up, was that we should have both events the night before. 6:30 p.m. the night before, have both Dubbo and Wellington there. Fair bit of debate around that, and the vote for that ended up going 5-4 against that. So then we needed to make another decision.
Who didn't vote?
You can look at the records there. I don't want to go name names here, Richard, but you can look at the
5-4, someone didn't have the guts.
Oh, sorry. No, one person was away. So we had Councillor Lewis Burns was away.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, so he's overseas at the moment. And so then it went to another vote because we had no decision then. We had to have some decision. So there was another motion put forward to have Wellington the night before and Dubbo the morning of, and that vote got up 7-2. But this is only a committee meeting. That's not the final decision of council. In 2 weeks' time,
Yes.
will be the final resolution. So I encourage people to make sure you contact your local councillor and tell your councillor or councillors what you think about Australia Day either the night before or the morning of. And last year, I actually thought it was quite successful in Wellington. I was there, and lots of councillors were there at the Wellington one. And then Dubbo, the morning of, was quite successful as well. And we are encouraging Aboriginal participation. And Lewis did a great job, Councillor Lewis Burns did a great job. We added an extra speech to the ceremony, to both ceremonies, having an Aboriginal context, and Lewis did a great job providing that in Dubbo. So I think
he did. I've got to agree. He did.
Yeah. So I think that's fantastic. But we want to be one. We want to be united, and we have got 15.6% of our population Aboriginal, and there is a long history in this country. So we think it would be great if the entire population, including Aboriginal population, were part of Australia Day, but we also understand the pain that Survival Day creates around the day of the 26th. So if we have to change the day by day, but still keeping Australia Day the 26th as the day, then I think that's okay.
All right, well, we'll wait and see 7-2, and we'll wait and see what happens in a couple of weeks' time on that one. We're spending a lot of ratepayers' money on a bridge.
This is a really interesting one as well.
And not on Sheraton Road or Wheelers Lane or Mayoral Road. We're spending it on a bridge, and it's all ratepayers' money. Tell us more.
So Saxa Road has been fairly well damaged by the road.
Exactly.
This is obviously down around the Wellington area, connects Mitchell Highway to the Golden Highway. And you've got a culvert in the middle of that, the Comabella Crossing on Mitchell Creek. Now, that culvert is destroyed. So you can't actually use that, or it can be used by very light traffic, but it's not in very, very good condition. And there's a bit of a makeshift little path beside that culvert that we didn't put in, that the people that live around that area put in as some way to get some heavier vehicles across. And we actually had to get permission from fisheries for them to keep that open there rather than having it closed down. We said to the community, this isn't good enough. We need to finally do something a bit more drastic with this rather than just fix up the culvert. And here was the big decision, Richard. It's a regional road. There is a lot of regional traffic that uses that road, not a lot of local traffic. So is it fair that the Dubbo Regional Council ratepayers are paying for a bridge on that road that is mainly used by people that aren't in this LGA? That's a tough one. We could replace the culvert. It would cost about $470,000 to do that, but the state government, because it was damaged by floods, would give us back the 470 roughly. So basically we could have zero cost, but we'd get the same thing back, and the next flood it would be underwater and you couldn't use it, and it would probably get blown apart in next major floods, but it would cost us nothing. Or we could build a bridge there above the 1 in 100 year flood, and that would mean that it would be used in flood times. It would be much more stable, much better outcome.
How much?
That's the scary part.
How much? A bridge over that culvert? That's millions.
We are talking millions. So a couple of options last night, and this isn't out to tender yet, but the couple of options in the way we constructed, maybe $1.65 to $2.7 million. We don't want to pay all that ourselves. We'd still get probably the 470 from the state government, but the big message from the state government, both the last state government and this one, is all about betterment funding. So they're saying, don't replace something that's being damaged with the same thing that'll get damaged again in the next flood, make it better. And we say, that's a great idea. Can we have some money for that? And they say,
no.
Maybe. No, they are saying yes sometimes, but you're never sure where. So we will actually apply for betterment funding for this particular project. And I'm pretty confident we'll get some betterment funding, because this is a bleedingly obvious example of what the betterment funding is all about. Replace something that's going to be cheaper for the state government long term. It's crazy that you might have something you spend 470 grand on, and every 10 years you spend another 470 grand, spend the money and do it properly, and a bridge should have a life of 100 years. That makes sense. We're going to take a small risk in constructing that bridge, building it, because we can't keep waiting around for the funding and doing the funding application at the same time. So that's the recommendation from the committee to council, is to go forward, put it out to tender. In the meantime, go forward and keep looking for some grant funding.
Wouldn't it be good for the Dubbo ratepayers if we never amalgamated?
I won't say anything about amalgamation.
No, I knew you wouldn't. I knew you wouldn't.
We've got it now. We've got to work with
$2 million bucks that could be spent on local roads in Dubbo now going on a bridge because of amalgamation, and maybe some funding from the state government. Oh, it's not good, is it?
Next question.
Well, yeah, next question. Well, next question. And I mean, that's got to be a relevant point.
Well,
it's got to be a very relevant point for Dubbo ratepayers. Had we not amalgamated, we wouldn't have the Saxa Road, we wouldn't have all those problems, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, next question is, anything been done about aquatics?
Well,
about the pool?
That was an interesting discussion last night. There was.
You've actually had a discussion.
We've had a discussion.
Well, that's a start.
We had one of the committee meetings last night had a report that came forward from the Aquatic Centre Working Party. And the Aquatic Centre Working Party has, as you know, councillors, council staff, swimming clubs, and actually at this meeting it had Belgravia, who have got the contract now. They came along and had a discussion as well. And one of the things that was brought up last night was the fact that somewhere, supposedly, there has been a report done for an indoor heated swimming pool, all year round swimming pool for Dubbo, but that hasn't been seen by the public of Dubbo. And so the question was asked last night, where is that report? Surely that gives us some information. Can we have a look at that? Now, it was pointed out that that report was a couple of years old now. It was the last council that did that report. So some of the numbers would be out of date. That's fair enough. But still, you'd get an idea of the cost and maybe the business case for that. So can we have a look at it? The message we got was maybe. Apparently there's some contractual issue, and I don't know the full story here, Richard, so I've got to find out the full story. But what we were told last night at the committee meeting was there's some contractual problem with that report, with potentially the contractor, the consultant that was used with that report, that it can't be released to the public for some reason. So we've got to find out why, get to the bottom of this and get it released to the public.
You've got 2 weeks.
2 weeks, thank you.
You've got 2 weeks, because that's the next time you're on this show as mayor. You've got 2 weeks to find out.
Right, well, we asked the question last night and the CEO promised that he'd follow that up and see exactly where that's up to. I don't know the bottom line with this. I don't know why the council would have had a report done by a consultant, which is using public funds to pay for it, and then not be able to be released to the public. I don't understand that. I want to get to the bottom of that.
Yep. I mean, there've been a number of reports done. When I was on council, we had at least 3. David Dwyer did 2, and a very good one for a square 25-metre heated indoor pool. And that report's floating around. So I've got a copy of it, actually, if you want to read it. It's ages old. The prices will be wrong, but it is a very good design, a very good concept, and designed after the one in Lismore.
Well, here's something interesting as well. I was in Canberra this week meeting with a few ministers. One of the ministers I met with was Minister Catherine King. She's Minister for a range of things, but including infrastructure. They've got a new grants process, which I actually quite like. Rather than spend a huge amount of money on a business case and putting everything together for whatever grant you might be after, there are some councils, I've heard say in the past, we couldn't afford to put in for that grant, which sounds crazy that you want the money, but it costs a lot of money to put in for the grant on a small chance of getting it. They've changed the process. They've said, you've now got a process where you put in an EOI. It's a very short, brief EOI on a particular project. And then you'll get feedback from the department to say, don't go any further. It's unlikely you're going to get this. Don't waste your money. Or, this looks pretty good. You've got a pretty good chance. If you put the rest of it together and it stacks up, you've got a pretty good chance. So it's a first step. It's a fairly cheap step. So in terms of an indoor heated pool, for example, we haven't been able to find a fund in the past that might be applicable for that. But the new EIA process might be a good way to actually say, okay, we think this is a goer. Can you give us feedback on whether or not you think this would be applicable? And then that'll be a stop-go as to whether we spend a lot of money on getting an application ready or stop there at that particular point with this particular program.
Yeah, makes sense. Finally, electricity.
Renewable energy zone. This is, Richard, a once in a multi-generation opportunity to transform Wellington. The renewable energy zone, the Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone, has Wellington as part of it. It's part of the Dubbo Regional Council, LGA. It's also got Midwestern Regional Council, so Mudgee, and it's also got Warrumbungle Shire Council, so Coonabarabran. That, at this stage, was a 3 gigawatt renewable energy zone across 20,000 square kilometres. That was going to be good for Dubbo and great for Wellington, but Energy Co have now said, actually, this is looking better than we thought. We found that those 3 councils have been really good to get on with. We actually want to expand this.
Unlike Armidale.
I won't mention anything about Armidale, but
come on, unlike Armidale, but keep on moving.
Those 3 councils have been good to deal with, and so they're putting together an amendment to their current renewable energy zone to go straight to 4.5 gigs as part of stage 1, but to 6 gigs as part of stage 2. And what's exciting about that is that'll double the size. Stage 2 is 2038, 15 years away. For anyone that thinks this renewable energy zone is a little flash in the pan, you'll see a bit of construction, it'll all go away. There's, I think, 15 years of construction work, Richard. We estimate 6,000 people. The Midwest came up from Energy Co said 5,000 people will be needed. It also said $10 billion of private investment, plus government investment in the transmission lines. What this means, again, Richard, this is transformational for Wellington. In 15 years' time, we won't recognise Wellington. And if we can get the little idea that we've been bubbling away with called a REAC, a Renewables Education and Activity Centre, basically a visitor information centre in the Wellington area, and get 100,000 people a year going through that, like the Parks Dish has, like the Snowy Hydro Scheme has, that again will add to that transformation of Wellington. So it's very exciting, but increasing that size, 3 gigawatts is always going to be good, but 6 gigawatts is even better.
Yeah, No, that's good. That is very good news.
Yeah, it is.
And it's about time we had some decent news from council. Look, always good talking with you. We'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks. Just a reminder to everybody, though, that look at your history for Australia Day and get it worked out, and stop listening to these silly ideas. Anyway, it's there. And Australia Day, the actual date was picked in 1949, 74 years ago.
Well, the celebration of Australia Day.
Yeah, it's Australia Day, with the 26th of January, was picked in 1949, and it was picked not for any other reason than Captain Arthur Phillip set up Sydney. There you go. But anyway, another story.
I take your point, but again, it's Australia Day. That's the date that's been chosen. Let's work out what way we can make it.
Yeah, but stop damning the date for something that never happened.
I take your point. Thank you.
All right. The Mayor of Dubbo, Councillor Matthew Dickerson, and we'll catch up in a couple of weeks about all that has gone on so far with the Saxa Road Australia Day, the Aquatic Centre, and we might get some more news on what's happening with the zoning of electricity. It's coming up to 25 to 10.